Traders, how are you? This is Marcello. Today we're doing the recap of what happened in the markets last week.
So in the markets, mixed this week, mostly. The Dow was down just over 2%. We're starting to see a lot more negative days than positive days, which is starting to be a little bit interesting, right? I've talked to you guys before how we saw Warren Buffett sell a ton of stock all of last year and this year. Even the previous report that came out about what he did in terms of his purchases and what he sold, he actually sold a lot more than he bought. He only bought one share, not one share, but he only bought one company, whereas he sold 11, 12, 13, 15. Even Bill Gates is the same thing. So I think we're starting to reach the turning point in this super overvalued market. The Dow, fifth consecutive session that was negative because of the economic uncertainty. The S&P 500, fourth consecutive negative session. The Nasdaq, even though it ended up negative, if I'm not mistaken, it did go up quite a bit in the beginning of the week. Overseas market news, global stocks inched higher on Tuesday. They hit a record high session for a consecutive session for the eighth time. This has to do obviously with the situation that the ECB, which is the European Central Bank, which is included in a lot of these global stocks, they decided to start tapering, whereas the Fed hasn't decided to continue the same stimulus and the quantitative easing. So the question we have is, well, if the ECB is starting to see inflation a lot higher than what it should be, so they're starting to taper, right? They're starting to take the money out of the economy that they're putting in because it's getting a little bit too hot. Why isn't the Fed doing that? Why isn't the central bank in the United States? If we're seeing inflation rates that are a lot higher than, not a lot higher, but the official statistics show that the U.S. is a little bit higher than Europe. The unofficial, the real statistics, obviously, inflation is burning hot. Now, the U.S. Fed, which is the central bank in the United States, can't increase rates because what's going to happen is if they raise them by just a little, the amount of debt that we have is going to spur a huge payment bomb, which means that we're not going to be able to continue paying the debt, and we're going to have to quote-unquote monetize the debt, which means take out even more debt to service and pay the debt that we already have. That's why they can't raise interest rates. And when that does start to happen, that's going to be the beginning of the end, in my opinion, because the dollar's not going to do so well. Remember that 40% of the dollars that are in circulation today did not exist before COVID. So, not bueno. European markets are mostly lower, with the Swiss market taking the lead for the biggest loser. Latin America and Canada are mixed. Canada, right here, negative 0.90%. In the Middle East, market was mostly mixed. South Africa taking the biggest loser there, just over 3%. And then in Asia and the far east, we have the Nikkei in Japan taking the biggest winner at 4.30%, with China not too far behind. A lot of news in Bitcoin and cryptos, a ton. First of all, we have El Salvador this week officially making Bitcoin legal tender, the first country to make Bitcoin money. And this is kind of what we've seen over the last few weeks, right, when it comes to the news in the Bitcoin space, where we have a lot of great news and then we have a lot of negative news. We have kind of these two extremes. It's going to be really interesting to kind of see what happens to Bitcoin long term. So El Salvador made it official, and then this should be amazing news for the Bitcoin world. Bitcoin actually collapsed 20% to 43,000 the same day that they made it legal tender, which I'm not surprised by because they probably did it on purpose, right, to not kind of encourage, let's say, the activity. Another thing as well, the Banco Agricola, which is a bank there in El Salvador, is going to let people pay credit cards, let their clients pay in credit cards through Bitcoin. And in addition to that, we have BBVA, which isn't one of the largest banks in the world, but a significant bank, for example, in Europe and also Latin America. They're going to start offering Bitcoin services. And then on top of that, now we have some of the negative news where a lot of the global bankers are now coming out saying warnings, and obviously the governments and the people who work for the government are going to say, well, Bitcoin is great. It's going to replace the dollar, right? The Swiss Central Bank, which is Governor Stefan Ingves, is saying that he doubts the staying power of Bitcoin because private money always collapses sooner or later, quote unquote. That's what he stated. And the Bank of Mexico Governor Alejandro Diaz de Leon is the 20 last names that everybody has in Latin America. Alejandro Diaz de Leon, Rodriguez Gomez, on Thursday saying that Bitcoin is going to be used as a tool for barter rather than legal tender, and identified it as a poor store of value because of the price swings. And this is kind of what I've always talked about when it comes to Bitcoin, right? I love the idea behind Bitcoin. I hate big governments, whether it's left or right, doesn't matter. I think the bigger the government, the more the corruption, the lower quality of life for you and I, right? That's why, especially when I do a lot of these videos, I always try to stay apolitical because it's about just talking about the facts, expectations. I want you guys to be able to learn what's going on with the economy and how to read it and how to trade it and how to invest it, even though I'm not a trading advisor or legal advisor. So, do your own research to trade your own money. And then we have, on the other hand, the situation where even though I love the idea behind Bitcoin, I am also a bit of a realist where I can't really understand how the people who run the world and run it, right, own it, how they're going to allow somebody else to run it for them. They're going to relinquish their power of the financial system, which they use to control all of us by, and just give it to a decentralized. I just don't think that's going to happen. So I think with the Bank of Mexico Governor Alejandro Diaz de Leon, I think is actually a little bit more right. I think Bitcoin will probably still exist, maybe long term. You'll still be able to buy it and sell it, or use it, things like that. But to have it actually be money, I don't think that's going to happen. I think it'll actually be blockchain what's going to revolutionize the world, and then we'll have what I call the government coins, right? Dollar coin, the euro coin, the digital euro, those kind of things, and that'll be kind of our new world order kind of system. The SEC is planning on suing the largest crypto exchange in the United States, Coinbase, after they announced or were planned to launch an interest-bearing product. They called it Coinbase Lend, where they're basically going to pay 4% in what's called a stable coin. Think of it like, if you guys aren't kind of adept in all the verbiage in the crypto world, think of it like a digital dollar per se. It's called a stable coin. And they're going to pay 4% in this stable coin while they lend to verified borrowers. So essentially, they're going to become a bank without actually registering as a bank, which is probably why the SEC is going to go after them. And also, probably to protect the interest of the banks, right? Because if the cryptos walk into the banks, their business model, obviously that's not going to be a good thing. And then we have another billionaire named John Paulson, and his recent comments are saying that digital currencies are a bubble that will eventually prove to be worthless. And, so there you go, just positive and negative. It seems like the more that we go, we have more extremes on both sides. It'll be actually really interesting to see which side ends up winning. Bitcoin is lower this week. Is higher this week, went up 1.34%, closed at just over 45,000. Commodities went up just a bit. The Saudi Arabia cutting its prices to the Asian buyers, which, remember, China is the largest importer of oil in the world. India is not too far behind. If I'm not mistaken, I think it's China, United States, and then India, to be able to go ahead and keep their market share. China sold reserves in oil as well to be able to try to lower prices and stabilize inflation. So even China's worried about inflation. So remember, we just talked about the ECB not investing, or actually taking out the money that they were investing, starting to taper. That's what that means. They're going to stop kind of helping out the economy in Europe. Now, China, they're starting to release products into the market, right? Their reserves of oil to be able to help the prices come down or not go up as fast, I should say. And the U.S. is just kind of sitting there letting everything happen. So you can see we're starting to have some red flags, right? I'm going to talk to you guys in just a moment about the actual inflation numbers, both on the consumer side and on the production side, which affects both you and me. But the consumer side is especially important because that's where the majority of the percentage of the economy is in most industrialized nations around the world. So they have had shortages, electrical shortages in a lot of provinces due to the increase in prices, in addition to natural gas and coal prices increasing as well. Crude for the week went up about 0.62%. International, which is Brent, only went up about 0.46%. And aluminum prices have exploded as well. after there was a coup in Guinea. So if you guys don't know where Guinea is, think of this as Africa, and you know how Africa kind of has like one of these things like this, right? It's kind of like an L, like a J. Well, on this little corner down here, Guinea is a country that provides 50% of bauxite imports to China. Bauxite is one of the chemicals that's used to be able to go ahead and make aluminum, which aluminum is literally runs our world nowadays, right? And so China is 60% of the world's aluminum exporter in the world. They make 60% of the world's aluminum. So if we have a situation where a country has a coup, but they can't get the product, then obviously that scares a lot of people, because the problem of the rising prices are going to get even worse, especially since we're having problems with shortages and supply chain issues and shipping rates to ship things like natural products for making aluminum from one place to the other is exploding. And you can see how things are just going amazing this year. 20% surge in the price of uranium. A lot of people are saying it's just the beginning. A lot of investors are starting to realize that nuclear energy is one of the more reliable and safe sources of power compared to things like coal and oil as well. Production has largely been halted in North America, but not due to the fact that the costs to produce it are not high enough to cover the costs here. But uranium is still down over 50% from the highest level in 2011. There's a public company, which is the second largest uranium producer in the world, called Cameco in Canada, and they produce 18% of the world's output. Because of the rise, they had a 21% explosion in their stock last week. And precious metals for the week, the only negative news, let's say, with all the prices rising, gold went down 2.28% to 1787, and silver went down 4.20% to 2378. Financing and banking news, the federal unemployment programs that were instituted in March 2020 during the COVID pandemic have officially ended last week. 8.8 million Americans are going to lose these benefits entirely, while just about 3 million or so are going to have their benefits reduced to $300 a week. While at the same time, the number of job openings in the United States had hit a record high at 10.2 million. So literally, the amount of jobs that are available for people keep going up at a record every week, but we still had a situation where people were getting so much in unemployment benefits that they just didn't want to go out and work. So now that the unemployment benefits have stopped, they most likely will now go and find those jobs, and we should theoretically see a decrease in those job openings now over time, because people need to work instead of getting free money from the government. The UK's Prime Minister Johnson has broke a campaign promise on Tuesday, and he's planned on raising taxes for workers, employers, and some investors as well, to be able to go ahead and fix the health and social care funding crisis. This is why the government shouldn't be managing these things, because they don't manage it very well. The costs are projected to double for people in ages as the population ages over the next 2 decades. Thursday, the Consumer Price Index year over year has gone up 0.8% year over year in August. So August of last year compared to August of this year went up 0.8%, while the Producer Price Index, which is the amount of cost it takes to produce something, to create something from the raw materials, went up to a 13-year high at 9.5%. The U.S. Producer Price Index went up 8.3%. So the official statistic, just from the production level of where they're making things, has gone up 8.3% in the U.S., 9.5% in China. And that's after they get it to us, right? So oil has gone up 40, 60%. Shipping rates have gone up. Like, everything is going up. Absolutely everything. And these are the official statistics. And the reason why I kind of give you those other numbers is because the real inflation rate, you guys have followed me for a while. At the beginning of the year, I've always said it's about 20, 30% based on what I was seeing purchasing at the grocery store. I think now it's probably above 30% based on all the numbers. Political news, German Chancellor Angela Merkel, after 16 years of power, is making an impassioned plea to voters to support the person that's going to take her position in her party, which is named Armin Laschet, even though a lot of people are starting to support other parties, so it looks like it's not working. On Tuesday, Brazilian President Bolsonaro verbally attacked the Supreme Court after they decided to impound a United States citizen that was essentially his friend that he was having a meeting with while he was on the tarmac trying to leave, this person from the U.S., Supporters are rallied around the country with heightened tensions in Latin America's largest democracy. He's facing slipping poll numbers, raising inflation, and criticism for handling the second deadliest outbreak of COVID, the deadliest, I should say. So on a per country basis, Brazil is the second worst when it comes to deaths, when it comes to the COVID. Democrat U.S. President Biden's approval rating, also in political news by American voters, is plummeting and went down to 39%. Also, he obviously has a situation with the fiasco in Afghanistan, the southern border, rising COVID-19 cases, in addition to other economic and financial issues as well. In economic news, data, 10.9 million was the record job openings, not 10.2 as I mentioned just a moment ago. So, again, hopefully now people will go back to work instead of not working because the economy's booming out there. Corporate news, private education stocks in China took a major hit on Thursday after the government banned private tutors giving classes online or in unregistered venues. Continue to tighten their grip. U.S.-based pharmaceutical and biotech firm Moderna went up 7.81 on Thursday after they announced that they were creating a 2-in-1 booster shot that's going to help against the seasonal flu and COVID-19. They're going to call it mRNA 1073. And Apple, which is the world's largest tech company by revenue, and also as of January 2021, the world's most valuable company, take a huge hit after a federal judge stated that they have to allow third-party payment processors in their Apple store. So both Google and Apple, what they did is when you go into an app, whenever you pay, you have to pay through their system, obviously, so they can get a percentage, right? But now they're saying that they can't do that anymore, and that could put a big dent into Apple's revenue because they make $19 billion from the App Store business. Trade news, China remains the largest exporter in the world as exports surged 25.6% year over year. In technology as well, a lot of tech companies, including Apple, Amazon, Facebook, Tesla, and Baidu, which is the Google of China, are moving away from the established computer chip firms and looking to bringing a lot of that development in-house, even though they're still going to rely on a lot of these other companies. There's one of the biggest processors of these chips is called TSMC in Taiwan. It costs $10 billion and years to set up one of these factories, or what's called the foundry. And so they're looking to kind of, and we have a huge semiconductor shortage as well. If you guys remember the last few weeks, I've talked about how even in Taiwan, they're diverting water from farmers that grow food to go into the semiconductor plants because of the shortages. So we have, the Colorado River, for example, which affects 40 million people, that the water from the river provides water for growing food, electricity, water to drink as well. And that's even going dry. So we have a situation around the world where rivers are going dry and or the governments are making worse by diverting the water to other avenues as well. In investment news, City of Taylor in Texas is competing with Austin, Texas to be able to place a new $17 billion computer chip plant from Samsung. Samsung is also looking to build another plant in Arizona, in New York. And they're hopefully going to give them big tax breaks to be able to go ahead and settle there. And in international events this week, researchers at the University of California in San Diego have created a new system that restrains populations of mosquitoes that infects millions of people a year with debilitating diseases. It's a new precision-guided sterile insect technique that alters the genes of the fertility of the males to be able to go ahead and have sterile offspring. And in natural disasters, a huge 7.0 earthquake in Mexico on the Pacific coast. They also got hit by the hurricane recently. There were landslides. People in the city of Mexico, 20 million people, largest city in the world, lost power in certain parts, in addition to large boulders and also landslides, cutting off a lot of the roads as well. The Dixie Fire in California is on track to be the largest forest fire on record for the West in California. I mentioned to you guys the situation with the Colorado River affecting 40 million people drying up. And that's on top of, for example, the Paraná River in South America, which is the second largest and second most important river in South America. That's also drying up. And Argentina is one of the biggest exporters of some crops, and now they have to lower the amount of crops that they export through the river, and they might have to stop altogether or exporting through the river because you just can't navigate anymore. You see, you guys see the different things, right? Going on. And in India, there was an outbreak of a virus called the Nipah virus, which unfortunately has a fatality rate of 75%. Compare that to the fatality rate of COVID, for example, which is, if I'm not mistaken, 0.01%. But hopefully that doesn't, what else do we need this year, right? So that's the news for this week, guys. Let me know if you guys have any questions. Don't forget to subscribe. We'll see you next week.